Hey guys, I'm Janet on occasion, and today we're talking about PHARAOH, and my, I guess, just lack of excitement about it, honestly, which I know, terrible way to start. So what I was going to do, and what I had basically done, is I've had hands-on gameplay with it. I've been able to play a demo, which is 3 battles, and they have, a little speech before each one, and then you do the battle, and it's fine. And you're playing as Ramses. Was he Ramses the second? Ramses or something. Ramses the Pharaoh, let's say. So you fight, with him against his enemies, right, 3 times, and it shows some of the new mechanics. And the new mechanics are things like, so you can have your archers swap to fire arrows now. I mean, that's been done. Fire spreads and stuff, which is really cool. But again, it's been done in 3K, so that's all sort of been done. And then there's a couple of big new ones, supposedly big, but inconsequential as far as I can tell. So you now have stances, not like shield wall and stuff. No, you have stances where basically you can say when you're in combat, do you push the enemy back or do you fall back as you fight? So now the battle line can shift a bit while stuff is engaged in combat. You have some control over how it shifts, even though that's never really mattered, because really all that matters is do you win your engagement? If so, brilliant, now run into the side of the other, the neighbouring enemy, and then you've got the flank, and that is actually what is substantial and will actually impact the flow of combat. So really it doesn't matter. Sort of you're just inching forwards and like maybe rubbing up against an enemy unit slightly for like, I guess, like a sort of flank, but not really consequential. It feels a bit pointless. So that doesn't really impact combat in any way that feels big. I mean, it might, if you throw some spreadsheets at it and punch a bunch of data in, you might see, oh, actually it does, make things 12% more effective. I don't really care, unless you can notice the change by looking at it, it doesn't feel worthwhile. And I couldn't tell by looking any difference that was being made whatsoever. Also, what happens if the enemy are in the same stance to push you forwards? Does that mean you're just rocking a hard place? What's happening? I don't know. I have no idea. So it just doesn't feel like anything that matters. It just feels like busy work, because Bronze Age stuff is quite, I don't know, you don't get like flying units, you're not like flanking with hippogriff knights and stuff, right? So you want more to do, so here's more actions to do. Tell your guys to inch forwards or inch backwards or to stay roughly where they are. It doesn't feel consequential. So one thing that is the big selling point, which does add a lot of flavour, and the sort of the illusion of strategic depth, is that the weather can change dynamically now. So you can be in the middle of combat, and then the weather changes, which sounds really cool, and it's very atmospheric to see a storm suddenly kick up, and then you've got to react to it. But the reaction to it is nothing. There's nothing to react to, frankly, because you just go, oh, okay, it's now storming. My ranged units have lower range than they did before. I'll have them walk forwards. That's it. That's the strategic depth of that. It doesn't do anything. So I'd like to see them go really far with that. If a storm's suddenly kicking up, what are you doing shooting arrows in a storm over your front line? No, you're going to kill a bunch of your own guys. No shooting at all. Okay, you can't shoot. Shooting's gone. Now you have to decide, do I just sit there like a Burke, or do I charge my absolutely incompetent in melee archers into melee just to like beat people with rocks? That's suddenly a big decision. You're having to really dedicate units to something they are not suited for, and that's a decision. Do I just leave them knowing that I can win the fight without them, or do I just try and get every bit of value out of everything I can if it's a pitched fight? That would be interesting, especially if you had things like so archers can set fire to trees and things, which gives them amazing tactical variety. They're also much better at punching through armor. They're just like a very good ranged unit. But what if slings, what if slingers weren't affected by storms as much, so they could still use ranged attacks despite, the storm? Then suddenly archers that are just that feel better and are generally going to be better in your army, certainly like a proper, elite army, you're going to have a bunch of archers in it. What if they were suddenly rendered ineffective, but the slingers were still really good? So suddenly cheap armies had the advantage in bad situations. That would suddenly give you actual tactical depth. Could be like, oh, I brought slings because I wanted to be fine in these situations. I want to still be able to, you know, pick off enemies like that and force them into conflict, you know. It's why I went into this fight, and when it said, oh, there's probably going to be a storm, I was very excited and delayed the engagement. You know, there would actually be strategic depth to it. But when you have to just move forward 10 feet, that doesn't change how you're using that unit. You're still using your archers as archers, and your range has been lowered, but so is the enemy's range, so it nets out the same. Like, who cares? You're all still shooting at the same targets. It's just taking longer now. It doesn't change anything. It changes nothing. So I find that really upsetting, I guess. It's things that could be real game changers and could force you into like really tough decisions for the sake of strategy. But now you don't. You don't. You walk forwards. It's nothing. So yeah, a lot of things that are the things that are different in this game have been in previous games or don't matter. And I think that's upsetting. You know, there's potential, but currently none of that really matters. So basically what you're left with is Troy. It's just Troy, again. Which, honestly, Troy was great. I loved Troy. Having like a new campaign map and like, you know, different sort of unique mechanics for different lords, you know, would be great. You know, for your different characters. Different campaigns to play. Great, but we haven't seen any of that yet. So I can't really comment on it. I can't say, oh yeah, we got a host of new characters with interesting, you know, interesting mechanics. There's an interesting economy system and stuff. I can't tell you any of that because I haven't seen the campaign. I've just seen these 3 battles, and these 3 battles are just Troy 1.5. That's all it is. So it's really hard to talk excitedly about any of it when it either doesn't go far enough or it's happened already. None of this is groundbreaking, which I think is a shame. Troy had a lot more groundbreaking things. Stuff like showing different icons for your light, medium, and heavy infantry was great. I actually want to see something like that in Warhammer. Warhammer Total War as well, because there are certain units that like look identical to much worse units. Stuff like Marauder Champions look the same as Marauders with great weapons, even though they are like completely different and require completely different tools to deal with. The banners are the same, you know? So just being able to recognise weight class across a line at a glance is really good. So just the shape of their symbol, you know? I love that. Stuff like that is really nice. Those little changes to UI. But the UI is identical to Troy. It's the same UI. They've just lifted it straight from Troy. And so, yes, it's really good, but they've not changed the aesthetic quality of it. The functionality is still there, and the functionality is great. I wouldn't want them to get rid of the functionality, but the sort of aesthetics of it is still just like, oh, it's Bronze Age, it's fine, it'll do. Which, again, just feels like it's not an upgrade, it's not different. It just basically signposts, oh, this is going to be much the same, which I think is bad. It sort of puts, it's not that it puts, like, its worst foot forward, it just puts the same foot you've already seen forward. So it doesn't really, like, signal to you that this is new stuff, find all the new stuff, you know, explore this, you know, new setting, this new environment. It's more Troy. Okay, I mean, fine, I liked Troy. I'm actually excited to play more Troy. That's great, if that's what it's going to be, but we don't really know what it's going to be until we get hold of the campaign. But the combat is Troy, but with a couple of bells and whistles that are functionally moot. They're, like, fine. Fires, good. Fires are good. Stances, you know, inching forward and back a bit. Who cares? And weather. Again, who cares? It's atmospheric. It adds atmosphere, I will say that. But mechanically, who cares? It doesn't really change how you play. It just makes it go, ooh, storm. Like, that's it. Which, you know, is fine if that's all it's meant to do, but it feels like it's supposed to be more significant than that. It feels like that's supposed to be the sort of, you know, linchpin of, like, having a new title. It's like, this is a new title, here's a new system. But the system's just sort of like the old system, but, like, more wibbly. So, again, it doesn't really change how you play or how you deploy your army or anything. So, I don't know. Yeah, I know, it's a shame. I'd love to be excited in these videos with a new announcement. But frankly, there's nothing to be excited about yet, except fire. Fire's good. But that's it, really. And again, it has been in previous games. You could set fire to environments in Three Kingdoms. So, you know, it's just like that cool thing is now in this as well. And it should be in everything. Because it's a cool thing. but that's kind of it. So yeah, I don't know what to tell you. So obviously I would have normally just done the Let's Play thing where I play through all 3 battles, but I run out of things to talk about. There was just nothing exciting about it. I couldn't be like, whoa, look at all that. It's just more Troy. So, nice short video. You guys now know my thoughts on it. Oh, and one last thing, them dropping Saga from the name, I think was probably, like, this is purely conjecture. I mean, I know I'm a content partner, so I get, like, early access and I can ask questions and things, but this is something we haven't had clarity on. The dropping of the Saga name. I think the word Saga, it's sort of supposed to denote a smaller scope, but then Troy was actually massive and really, brilliant. It had so much functionality and stuff that was all bespoke, and it was great. It was really impressive. I think Saga made it look like an inferior product, and I think that's probably what market researchers said. If it's got the name Saga, well, if it's got the word Saga in the name, people assume it's like Thrones of Britannia, and it's just going to be, hitchhiking off some older title, which is kind of ironic given the fact that PHARAOH seems to be just riding on the back of Troy, and yet it's now presented as the superior, like, real thing, like, brand new, historical, rather than, like, the side project that was Troy. So it's like Troy 1.5, but apparently that 0.5 is more significant because they've dropped. It's very odd. So really, ignore it, because putting Saga in the name was just like a marketing thing. I believe Sega was basically just like, yeah, you need to milk the Total War franchise more. Get another studio churning out, like, other games. And I think that's what it started as. And now they're like, oh, actually, we can just have 3 studios all making Total War games. Not side projects, but, like, Total War games. And it means we can get, like, a major release every year or 2, right? Fine. I'm happy with that. I think that's great. Because I think just Saga made people upset, so they get rid of that. Whether this has changed in scope or not, I don't know, but we've had this sort of thing in the past without the weird, descriptor of Saga. We had Napoleon, which was just Empire 1.5. We had, Attila was just Rome 2.5. And we had, well, Alexander was Rome 1.5, right? We've had this stuff before, and so they're just doing that now. They're just like, oh no, we'll just make the Total War game. People won't immediately look at it and go, ugh, Saga. And they can just judge it on its own merits. And I think that's what matters. The idea of just poisoning the well with just some arbitrary tag is stupid. So I think they realised that, and they just dropped it, and now you just look at PHARAOH, decide if it's something that you want to invest in, look at the price tag, and you just judge it, right? Like you would buy any other game. There's not this weird thing of just like, oh, but I played Thrones of Britannia, so it means this is going to suck. Well, it's not, because it's not going to be anything like that. But I think that is the baggage that Saga carries, unfortunately. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's just business rubbish. I mean, I don't think it really affects anything. When I can play campaign and show you guys campaign, you guys can look at it, and I'll try and give an honest depiction of the game, and you guys can judge it for its own merits and go, oh, actually, this looks good, this looks like something I want to play, and I'm willing to pay how much it costs for it, so I will. That's the only equation you need to make. So any discussion of whether it should be called a Saga title or not is irrelevant. You can all get informed about buying any individual product, and whether it's a mainline title or not doesn't really denote anything. Although I found it fine when I bought it years ago. Rome 2, on launch, everyone said it was a catastrophe. I didn't notice any of the flaws. I was just sort of happy to go along for the ride at that point. But I wasn't as, like, I don't know, invested, I guess, in the series I clearly am now, basically, playing it for a living almost. So, like, there have been bad launches and stuff that people have just avoided for a while. A lot of people didn't get Attila after Rome because Rome was bad. So, like, there's always going to be baggage. So, yeah, just judge the game on its own merits. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. We won't know until we get campaign and we can put those battles into context. I think that's about it, really. So I'm done. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed this sort of frank discussion on this that I wish I could be more excited about. But, fire's good. So I guess that's it. So comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.